find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die. Join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the Multiverse.
So, when this intro's playing, Shiloh and listener, I legit don't know what I'm gonna say when the intro finishes, and so I use that intro as like my "you better figure it out" time, because I like to live on the edge, apparently.
Yeah.
So I've decided, and I'm just gonna dive right into it because I did want to talk to you about the Brandon Sanderson novel that I picked up.
Okay.
If you and our listener recall, last episode I made the introduction about House of Leaves, which is a very cerebral sort of Inception book. It's hard to wrap your mind around. Well, in a complete opposite side of the spectrum is Tress of the Emerald Sea, and not in a negative aspect either. But if House of Leaves is, let's see how I'd compare this. If House of Leaves is the depth and complexity of, say, Baldur's Gate 3, then Tress of the Emerald Sea would be like the complexity of that Nightcall game. Do you remember? Both good games. Nightcall is way simpler. So
Yeah.
it was a very entertaining game, and I think actually Swampy enjoyed that more than either you or I did. But as far as my introduction to Brandon Sanderson goes, I think the most jarring thing, and this isn't because I read House of Leaves first, it's simply the fact that the book is written by a character of his that's in his Cosmere. I have no connection with this character because I've never read any of his other books. And so the verbiage and kind of it's like not fourth wall breaking, but it'd be like if you were a character in a universe and you had an adventure and you were writing it about another character, like the person you had the adventure with. And the confusing thing is this character that is telling this story actually appears in the story. And so it switches from the character Tress's perspective to the narrator's perspective, which is a bit jarring. It's not bad because the story itself is very whimsical and enjoyable. A lot of people compare Tress of the Emerald Sea to what's that? Princess Bride. I guess Brandon Sanderson had inspiration from Princess Bride when he wrote this book. So anyway, it's a good book. It's an interesting look at, I guess, fantasy. And again, I have no other experience with the Cosmere, so I don't really know. So listeners who have read a lot of Brandon Sanderson, you're probably like, this guy is a noob. And you wouldn't be wrong. So, I have some other stuff to talk about that I've been up to, but how are you, Shiloh? How have you been? Because we haven't got a lot of game time together this week because I've been trying to catch up in Baldur's Gate 3, and you have been blazing new paths in Guild Wars 2. So, do you want to tell us what you've been up to this week?
Well, like about 80% Guild Wars 2, about 10% Baldur's Gate 3, and about 10% on rewatching Arcane. So that is, with my free time, that is pretty much what I've been up to this past week. So a ton of Guild Wars 2. I don't know if 80% is actual a pretty good number. Somewhere between 80 and 90 is probably more accurate, but well, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to go with 80%. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's funny because this expansion is smaller than Path of Fire, than Heart of Thorns, and certainly End of Dragon. So you kind of get through it and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's about it. But then you realize, oh, well, I did only pay $30 for this expansion.
Yes.
And there is more to come. That it's kind of one of those kind of a mixture of amalgam of Living World Season 4, 3, or Icebrute Saga and an expansion put into one thing. So they're just kind of doing away with, I think, both. I don't really know that for a fact, but would be my guess is they're doing away with both releasing huge expansions and Living Worlds and just kind of going with this model, which is more kind of on the line with ESO's model, I would think.
Yes.
The playthrough and really only getting 2 zones, plus the Wizard's Tower, which is really more of a city than an actual zone. The strike missions, and I haven't done any of those yet, but et cetera, with more to come down the road. So it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I've really enjoyed this expansion. It's weird not having Aurene around. It's weird not having to chase down
a dragon,
a god dragon, but it is what it is. Yep. So,
and we're going to get into that a little later in this episode after we've worked through the intro and the news and stuff. And I have some thoughts on it as well, relating to what you said about the ESO model. And so I'm going to go type that in the notes real quick so I don't forget to say it. But so outside of Baldur's Gate 3, which I've been playing pretty heavily this week because, like I said, I'm trying to catch up to you, who you've made it past Act 2. You're now into Act 3. You're actually getting to see Baldur's Gate, the namesake of this game, for the first time. But I have played some Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure, and one thing that I just keep coming back to, like as a mental thought regarding Guild Wars 2, is how it's gonna be that comfort game, comfort MMO for me. So we've talked a lot, not just amongst ourselves, but also with like our friends Cash, Jibs, and Stark. All 3 of those guys, their comfort MMO is World of Warcraft. And various people have various comfort MMOs, like a lot, like our friend Tempest, Final Fantasy XIV. And so each of us have this MMO that is our comfort MMO. And the thing that strikes me as interesting about this is it's almost like that first game that you really dive into when you like you start gaming, right? So like you've got that game that was like your beginning game. And so of course you and I have been gaming a lot over the past few years. But Guild Wars 2 was like the first MMO that both of us in the modern era have gotten into on the PC. And so it just kind of clicked, I think, with us. But also, I mean, coming off of ESO, there are a lot of similarities and stuff. And more importantly, Guild Wars 2 fits our play style better, where we're not having to join teams, 3 nights a week in order to push a raid that we're probably not even going to finish for gear that helps us be better at the raid. It's you're laughing because it's silly. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's chasing the dragon, chasing dog, chasing its tail. So, but yeah, it's definitely it has become that comfort MMO, and unlike most people, I don't think I'm a anomaly in any shape or fashion, but I don't really have that throwback MMO anymore, where I just kind of pick one that I particularly like and settle in on, and I stick with it for however long until I get disgruntled, cough ESO, or I just move on. And I'll play pretty much any of them for any length of time, but none of them have kind of filled that void that ESO left when I decided to move on from it, like Guild Wars 2 has. So yeah, it's definitely my comfy MMO, and it is a comfy MMO, even though it can be rough and it can be hard, and it's definitely not Animal Crossing with fantasy graphics. It's certainly not that at all, but it's it definitely makes feels like home more than any of the others that I've played recently. So
yes, I think that's the big thing too. Is for me, and Secrets of the Obscure has kind of, I guess, opened my eyes to this a bit. Like, I love just working on like a mastery track, something that I can put points into to get quality of life upgrades. And that defines like what I do. And in the case of Guild Wars 2, as long as you're in the zones that those mastery tracks come from, no matter what you do in it, the XP, whether that's a jumping puzzle, whether that's a sky scale race, whether that's a event, whether that's picking bushes and mining ore, like all of that XP goes to that mastery track. So I really enjoy that because it's a play your way mentality. But yeah, it was just something I thought about because our friends Cash and Jibs are back playing World of Warcraft, and I was like, you know what? They're playing what is comfortable, and then you've got you and I on the other side. We're playing what is comfortable to us. And what I do wonder is in the future for new MMOs, that's it. You know, new MMOs that are going to come out, they've got a lot of checks, you know, and boxes that they're going to have to check off for a lot of players, especially us older players that have played them all. But I think the hardest thing or the most challenging thing that they're going to have to overcome is either becoming that new comfort MMO or competing with that concept of comfortable MMO. And so we'll see, you know, what games can pull it off. But more importantly, you know, it's good to have this game that you can kind of fall back to. So with that said, I also have another comfort game, which is not very comfortable at all, but we've been playing it since October, I think. And it's Hell Let Loose. So if you know what that is, very much not and we talked about it in episode 1 or 2, very much not a comfort game. It's pretty intense at times. You've got people shouting at you in command chat. You've got tanks going by. You've got shells raining down from enemy artillery. But as far as like a FPS game goes, it's become that sort of comfort. I just want to jump in, play an hour and a half long match, and win or lose, like I'm just there to have a good time. And so it was with this mentality that Friday night, myself and Tested Weevil, another good friend of ours, were like, let's go play some Hell Let Loose. Let's try to get a recon squad. Now, each team only has 2 recon squads, and that is a spotter and then a sniper. And so we managed to get one, and it's on Remagen, which is this huge map. Well, they're all huge maps, but the notable feature is there's this massive river in the middle of the map that you can't cross except for this giant bridge. And there's cliffs on one side, and we were the Germans, and so the Germans start on the side with the cliffs, and then the Americans start on the other side. They have a tougher fight for sure. And we get up on this cliff, Weevil and I, and he starts to, you know, we're looking at the bridge, and here they come, enemy troops. And this is like 400 meters out. And so Weevil misses like the first few shots, and then he finally starts to dial it in. And it was just sublime as far as like a sniping experience goes. And this is the thing too, like if you're not the sniper, sometimes that can feel a little boring in other games. But when you're the spotter, you've got binoculars, you're calling out targets, you're relaying information from command chat to your sniper on where targets are, what to look out for. And it's just a ton of fun. And we ended up winning, and I think he got 38 kills. Eventually, we had to stop the feeding on the bridge, the ravenous feast that he was having with his sniper shots, and we had to go deal with the artillery that the enemies were shooting off at us in the back line. But then we harassed an enemy squad the rest of the match, and that was a ton of fun. So that's what I've been up to. Those kind of 3 experiences, including the book, but also Baldur's Gate 3. And it's just been a lot of like comfort stuff. Baldur's Gate 3, I think, requires a little more mental fortitude since it's new. There's a lot to keep track of, a lot of like, like narratives pieces, like, okay, this item that I picked up 20 hours ago, oh, I'm actually going to use it now. Surprise. There's that type of stuff, but also like combat. And we're going to get into it when we get to Baldur's Gate 3 because, I had a rather challenging fight, which you're going to know plenty on. But yeah, it's been a week. It sounds like I've done a lot. I really haven't. I guess it's just like a little bit here and there, a few hours a night maybe on various different things. But yeah. There are 2 pieces of news, Shiloh, before we just dive into Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure that I wanted to talk about. The first is officially Baldur's Gate 3 is coming to Xbox. Xbox tweeted this out on August 25th. In partnership with the talented people at Larian Studios, we're thrilled to share Baldur's Gate 3 will be coming to Xbox later this year. I think that's the important part, is that when they're not going to have to wait until 2024. They're going to get it maybe by the end of the year, by the holiday season. And then they said, stay tuned for more details later. And I haven't seen any details come across, but this was just 2 days ago. So, yeah. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I know that I think what they did is they reached a compromise, and the fact that Larian was like, well, we can release it, but we can't do split screen for the S. And so that's what they've decided on. It's like, well, okay, we'll take that.
Which is funny because Xbox, I guess, does have a clause that says games cannot release with features missing from one console to the other. And I guess the syntax or the compromise or the loophole that they're working with here is that co-op is considered a mode, whereas multiplayer, which it will have, and obviously we do it without co-op, with split screen. I think that's the key. So split screen is a mode of multiplayer, which is the feature. So I think what probably happened is the Xbox is like, we're really not going to let them put the biggest game of the year on our console when they want to. What are we doing? So yeah, I think they were wise in choosing the route that they did. So it would be, I mean, it's unfortunate if you do own an S that if you want to sit with your hubby or wife or kid or dad or mom or sister or great grandma or dog or whatever and play couch co-op, you can't do that. You just need to upgrade to get an X, I guess. I don't know. But hey, it's coming. So yeah, there you go. So no more. And it'll be funny to see because I mean, I did play Divinity 2 on the Xbox originally. Yeah. And it runs really, really well. And you would think for CRPGs, they're like, oh, I don't know how that would work. Kind of like games like Civilization and those types of games where you're like, I don't know how you pull all that off with the UI and the menus and stuff. But they did a really good job with the UI and for Divinity 2. So I'm sure they're going to do a great job for Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, I was curious, so I plugged in an Xbox controller in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's a decent system. I immediately unplugged it because it's a bunch of radial wheels, and I was like, my brain can't. I'm already used to mouse and keyboard, but the feature is there, and they have put some time into it, so that's pretty great. So the other topic of news, it's not really news, but Cyberpunk released a recent Cyberpunk 2.0 pre-Phantom Liberty trailer. I think it's also a Phantom Liberty trailer. But anyway, this is quite literally the rebirth of Cyberpunk. Now, both you and I played Cyberpunk in 2020.
Yeah,
right?
Launch, whatever that was. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's infamous for having launched in a broken state on previous gen consoles. You and I didn't really have that experience on our Series X's. But since then, CD Projekt Red has worked tirelessly to improve the game, and they are adding a ton of stuff with 2.0 and then Phantom Liberty. They're adding powerful new weapons, redesigned cyberware, and I've read some of which is based on Edge Runners, which is the Cyberpunk anime, so that's great. They've got redesigned perks. They're adding a relic skill tree, so I'm not sure what that entails. And of course, like the trailer briefly shows it, but for this type of stuff, I just like to wait and see when it launches and read the patch notes. They're adding new vehicles. They're revamping police and also including vehicle combat, so that's going to be great. And then there's a ton of other stuff that is going into this sort of reimagining. And then that's on top of what Phantom Liberty brings to the table, which is a whole new storyline. I did see that the storyline for Phantom Liberty will be playable during the main story of Cyberpunk. So it's not going to be a get to the end of Cyberpunk and here's this new story, which I think I was talking to Tempest because he asked the same question and I was like, I don't know. And now we know. But I don't see how they could have done it post credits.
Yeah.
So especially with the ending I got, like it just wouldn't make sense. So
yeah, very definitive ending depending on which one you got. I'm very interested in this. I will have to, number one, buy the game again. And then with this, so I don't really see that coming in my gaming future anytime soon, but I am interested to play this and maybe playing it on PC or just buying it again on Xbox. I don't know, but it would be fun to go back and actually have a because it should run a lot better, and CD Projekt Red isn't known for
releasing
slacking. So, I'm sure they've put in a ton of work on it since we played it. So it'll be interesting. It'll be one of those rainy weekend, nothing else to do, maybe in 2024 for me, I'm thinking. Who knows? It depends on how long the current game cycle for this year, which has been nutso.
Yes.
Maybe Christmas. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah.
We do want to talk about it on the show. I don't know how many episodes that'll be. We have a lot of stuff we can talk about because there's the tabletop, there's the video game, there's the anime, and then there'll be this new expansion. So the fact that it's coming in September just means no relief if we tried to do it when it launches. So we'll see. I'm anticipating Starfield's going to be pretty big, and we'll get to that at the end of the episode. So, Shiloh, I don't have a fancy little bumper for Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure, so dun 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 dun, take it away.
All right. Anka.
Freaking Timey's great.
Yep, Timey rules, and if she dies, we riot.
Anka drools.
There you go. There's a new shirt. And a zero only to the death cage match.
I was actually thinking about that.
What, Azura cage match?
No. Just the Azura and Sylvari are very fun and unique races for MMOs. And I have found that even though I tend to play the most humanoid, boring races in MMOs, I still really appreciate when MMOs have those other races that have their own culture, have their own unique aesthetic, style, locations, all that stuff. I felt the same when we dived into WoW for a bit, because I played a Pandaren monk, And it was like going to Pandaria was just a ton of fun. Just, I mean, obviously, like the culture is heavily Asian themed, but it was just a ton of fun to explore, to sort of see the culture of the race that I had chosen. And so the same is especially true of the Sylvari. Ysura are, they're like a little bit of a love-hate thing. But the Sylvari are a really unique take on that sort of elf trope that you get in a lot of MMOs, specifically considering that the age of if you make a Sylvari character, the actual age of the character is the age of how long it's since you created it. Because the way they wrote Sylvari culture and backstory and lore is that when you first have that opening dream and then you pop up in Caledon Forest, that's you being birthed by the great tree. And you know, there's all sorts to this, and we're not going to get into it, but so I really enjoy the racial stuff. And as a segue into Secrets of the Obscure, which race is back, at least in, from what I've seen, a little bit of a capacity? The dwarves, or a dwarf. And so it's really neat.
A dwarf, yeah.
A dwarf. It's really neat to see, again, how they integrate all that stuff into Guild Wars 2. But Secrets of the Obscure, Shiloh, what's your knee-jerk reaction? You fired it up, you did, you clicked the little mail that you got and went from there.
Oh, I mean, the first things that popped up was the load-in screen was different.
Yes,
and
that too.
You had mentioned it last episode. This is the first time, or maybe not. If you didn't mention it, then we were talking about it at some point during a chat, Discord chat or something. But it's the first time that we've experienced a expansion in Guild Wars 2. I had played early during launch, way back in 2013 or whenever it was, but only got to level 60 and basically quit playing the game for God knows what reason. But and then came back last year, and so since then, between 10 years had passed. So Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, End of Dragons, all the Living World seasons, those have all come post-launch, and so I never got to experience any expansion for the game. We basically had expansion catch-up to do over the past year. Well, not quite a year, but 9 months. So it was really neat to actually see a unique load-in screen with Zioja on the front. So that was pretty cool. And then popping in, I popped in right before launch came because I just wanted to see what the flurry of activity, because sometimes it's fun. The thing about the launch for this expansion was normally when an MMO has an expansion coming out, or even sometimes non-MMOs do this, they shut down servers for 24 hours, leading up to the launch. They didn't. So I was able to log in because I had noticed that somebody was playing, and I was like, oh, that's weird. So I jumped in. Someone from Steam was playing, and I was like, that's weird. So I jumped in, and sure enough, I was able to play. And then all of a sudden, messages started popping up, Secrets of the Obscure coming in 15 minutes, shut down or log out so you can
refresh,
boot up the new client. Yeah. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I was able to kind of go in. There were a lot of the amount of dragons just hovering, sky scales that were hovering over the area in
what's that?
Kessex Hills.
Yeah, what's the town called? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It was known as the Wizard's Tower Town, so that's no longer a thing. So.
Yeah, that's where I went to go check out, see what was going on.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case there was like a big event or whatever. And there wasn't, but there were a ton of people out there just hovering over the area that was the Wizard's Tower. just kind of hanging out and doing stuff. So
yeah,
that was pretty neat. And then got to log in, and it was just kind of jumped right into the story. Got the mail and was like, all right, here we go. So I won't get into spoilers for the story, but so far, and I'm not that far into the story, I've been in typical Guild Wars 2 fashion. I get through parts of the story, and then I just want to go out and see the world and explore. And then I'm like, all right, that's good. So I go out and do another little mission. So I don't necessarily blow through the story and then go backtrack. I'd rather do the story, do some exploration, get some mastery stuff done, get some, just see all the stuff that's going on other than the story. So I think I'm about halfway done with the story so far, but it's really well written. And you had mentioned, looking at the notes here, that was exactly my thought in the cryptid realm.
Yes.
Reminded me a lot of Savathun's stuff in The Witch Queen.
Yes, very much so, like uncanny almost. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thought that, like you mentioned earlier, it's the dragon cycle or the whatever, it's done.
Yeah, we're done.
This is a new enemy, a new deal, a whole new direction for what Tyria is going to be up to and what the commander is going to be up to in Tyria. But yeah, the way they did that opening mission, and then you find yourself in this Cryptis area or Cryptis realm, throne world, was really neat. I like the vibe there. It's pretty terrifying, but it was, I'll be curious to see. Like, I've only played that opening mission because I'm the type of player that I'm trying to go through the story in order. And so I'm like halfway or a fourth or a third of the way through End of Dragons. And so I'm close, but I'm not quite there yet. So, but it has been about a year, actually, as of this recording or this episode going live. I'd have to look, since I first played Guild Wars 2. So it's been a blast, honestly. We talked about that, but let me see what I put up here. Okay, so there's my note for the ESO model. I just wanted to mention that real briefly. I am, I guess, cautiously optimistic for ArenaNet's approach to this, because the ESO model has ended up for you and I becoming rather stale. Especially because I never was able to work through the more recent expansions. Like, I did Vardenfell, I did Somerset, I didn't even do the cat place, Khajiit place. I did some of Western Skyrim storyline, but it just became too much, and then a lot of people were complaining that it was too redundant and predictive and whatever else.
I hope they don't fall into that trap. I like the model. I hope at the same time, and I hope that they're not going in this direction, but it would be hard for them to really avoid not going in this direction, is kind of doing, because I personally enjoy and have enjoyed Guild Wars 2 approach of just this long saga. Because it's really kind of spoon-fed me the story, and I've grown very attached to the characters. And it kind of enhances everything that you do in the game when you have this idea of what is actually going on, and there's this overarching story that goes on. Now I'm a little concerned, and there are other MMOs that are falling into this too. Final Fantasy XIV has just ended their big long story arc with the Zodiac, and so now they're kind of going on uncharted grounds. Guild Wars 2 is now into that same boat. Actually, Destiny 2 is actually going to be into that boat once the final shape launches in February. So it's interesting to see how they're going to transition from these big, long saga story arcs to maybe something a little smaller like this, but hopefully they can pull it off. And the one thing that does keep me slightly more positive in that regard is that the storytelling in this expansion, I think, is a step up.
Okay.
From everything that they've done so far. That's hard for me to say because it is still a little early on, but
yeah,
it's very, very good, and I'm enjoying it for sure. So I have yet to encounter a char only ride on a tank, and that sort of, remember that strike mission that I
remember it. I about
vowed never to do again in my entire life.
And the thing is, and that's one complaint, or rather criticism I've seen about ArenaNet's approach. So when they re-released Living World Season 1, they re-released the Tower of Nightmares part of it. Mm-hmm. And the Tower of Nightmares was, and again, this perspective is from someone who didn't play when it first was out, was very challenging for what it was, especially if you're just trying to get through the story. There's nobody doing it. And so even if you go into the public instance where anybody can join, like, you're going to have a bad time. So they need to retune it, I think, a bit. And then some people are saying the same about the Battle for Lion's Arch, which was the final episode of Living World Season 1. And so in that same vein, Shiloh and I are working through Icebrood Saga. This would have been like a few months ago. And we get to this mission that we have to do for the story that was what probably could be most closely associated with as like a raid from ESO, except it was literally just Shiloh, myself, and one other random guy in this entire thing. And it was brutal. Like, it's meant for 10 people. And so we get to the final boss, and I'm pretty sure we almost lost. But it took like 30 minutes just for the final boss. Not to mention the 30 to 45 minutes of the rest of it that it took us to do. And so the content itself was all right, but it would have been way better with a full group. But we were in the public instance, and there was no one there doing it. So... yeah. But that's a common complaint with Icebrood Saga, is that they made some interesting decisions that sort of impacted the storytelling in it. So it is what it is.
Well, there is one thing that they generally, if something doesn't go right, or they are very quick into change face. Like, they will switch it up without a blink of an eye. They are not very stubborn in that regard. If something isn't working, even if something is, sometimes they'll just be like, no, you know what? We're not going to do dungeons anymore.
We're not going to do that. Which is sad, but like,
I'm going to get you to work on Saturday. They just do whatever they want. Which is, I mean, it's the beauty of really not having to answer probably to shareholders and stuff.
Yes,
they are a very small company, so they can do what they want.
Yeah, and we'll dive into more of that. So Shiloh and I are going to be planning for an episode, maybe 2-part episode, fully dedicated to our journey in Guild Wars 2, which will be a full review, looking back on a ton of memories from the game with all of our friends. And so we're planning for that. So we're kind of bleed into that here and there because there's a lot to talk about with the game. But we are planning for that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we're going to do it to give it a proper discussion, I guess. But for the sake of Secrets of the Obscure, the next thing that I think is worth pointing out, and I've only experienced this first zone, I don't even remember what it's called, but it's like an amount. Is it in the mists technically, or is it floating high above the sky? Okay,
it's off Maguma.
It's called
the Horn of Maguma.
Is that the name of the zone?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the name of the area.
Yes.
So it's off to the west of
northwest.
Of the first zone of Heart of Thorns, Verdant
Brink. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
it's off to the north west of that.
Yeah, and it's a nice, this first zone that you get into is like an amalgamation of the previous expansion zones. So you've got this floating island that's desert, you've got this floating island that's snow and rocky terrain, and then you've got this jungle and Rada Novus. And part of it is that some of these areas have been like yoinked out of the mists and sort of duplicated. It's again, I'm not very far, so I don't know, and I'm sure that's part of the story that you find out. But then you've also got like just the classic Kessex looking area, and so it's a really neat location, all about the sky scale. So thankfully both you and I got the sky scale and 100% of the masteries like long before this expansion launched. They did change. Actually, can you get the sky scale the old way? I wonder.
You still can,
okay,
if you own Path of Fire in Season 4.
It's yet to be determined if this is faster. Maybe it is.
I'm sure it is. I've looked into it, which is, it was sad because I looked into getting the sky scale skin, because obviously I don't need the sky scale. I've already got my buddy. But the skin would be cool. And unfortunately, I am sad to report, I don't think there's any way to get the sky scale skin without getting the sky scale the new way, which is kind of disappointing, but it is what it is.
It is.
Maybe they'll change that down the road, but it does seem a little faster, but it is still fairly involved, like the sky scale was, at least in, I don't think you have to egg hunt, which is unfortunate. No one has to go through that.
It's very fortunate because that on Dragon's Fall was brutal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's unfortunate that people don't have to endure our pain.
Suffer with us.
Yeah.
No,
I'm a sadist, I guess.
I really liked the sky scale grind though. So I
had fun with it.
It was a good, like, I think it took me 2 or 3 weeks to go from beginning to finishing the mastery, 100%ing the masteries. So that was a good chunk of time. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, the environment, it's funny because it reminds me a lot of Jahai Bluffs in Season 4. I think that's the name of the zone, where it's kind of this time.
Yes. Yep.
And I think a lot of this has to do a little bit with Kralkatorrik, because he was he created so much chaos just floating around, just dropping branded stuff everywhere, distorting time and reality. That the background, I don't think this is any kind of spoiler, but the Wizard's Tower was basically put into place to protect Tyria from what you're now seeing, and they've basically kind of stood in almost like angel-esque type of
role
wizards that have basically protected Tyria from these outside sources, and kind of look down below and say, well, you guys deal with the dragons. We got our work cut out for us up here. And now you're starting to see what they've been protecting Tyria from. So, and I think Kralkatorrik has had a little bit of, he's really kind of messed stuff up. Plus just the dragon cycle ending has really kind of messed everything up. So now things are a little janky, and trying to figure it all out and put it back together. But so it'll be interested to see where we go from here. But yeah, I wanted to bring up the new, one of the biggest features that I think I wasn't totally sure on, but I think I thought I was going to like it, but now seeing it in place, I really love it. Although there was one daily from yesterday today, that was a little bugged, but the new Wizard's Vault system. So it's basically, they've done away with the dailies, and well, not all of the dailies, but the overall arcing daily of basically acquiring 2 gold.
Yes.
They've done away with that. They've done away with login rewards, which I'm sure people that own multiple accounts just so they can log in and collect the reward and then mail it to their main account. Those people are probably pissed, but whatever. Maybe don't do that.
Touch grass.
Yeah. Grab some grass and go for a walk. This new system, it reminds me a lot of WoW's trading post system.
Which is a very good system.
Yeah, which I really liked. But this is a much better version of that. So it's funny that I think WoW kind of borrowed the dragons for Dragonflight from Guild Wars 2, and now Guild Wars 2 is borrowing the trading post system.
Yep. And the Wizard's Tower, and they're like
making it better. So yeah. Well, I think the Wizard's Tower has been there since Guild Wars 1.
Yes, but it's hilarious that like Dragonflight comes out.
Same thing.
No, Dragonflight comes out, basically copy paste the Griffin / Skyscale, and now Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure comes out and basically copy pastes Dollarin into Guild Wars.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But yes, the trading post in WoW, I really loved that. The only complaint is that there weren't a ton of rewards. And so where I think this new Wizard's Vault has the edge is that you can use those points you get to buy stuff that would just help you in the base game. Like you can buy armor. You can buy certain crafting materials. You can buy actual stuff from the gem shop using these new tokens.
It's different. So
I thought like bank tabs or something like that you could buy.
No bank stuff. They're build storage stuff,
which is something that could only be bought previously
on Gem Store. Revive orbs, stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff is, if you've played long enough, you'll get. But I actually acquired the Griffin skin. That was nice. The first thing that I dropped. And I was like, whoa, I had enough points just from doing dailies and one weekly. So the neat thing is if you focus in on just getting the weekly done, like, because there's a list of, I think, 6 or I think it's a total of 8 objectives I only focused on PvE.
Yes.
Because I don't really play enough PvP, certainly.
Yeah.
And definitely definitely not enough PvP and not enough world versus world unless I have to go there to do a legendary, basically. I'm a PvE Care Bear. So I selected only PvE options, which was probably the best thing that I could have done, evidently, from what I've read. That's probably, if you're a PvE player, mainly just stick to that because you'll get more options on what you can do for a list of objectives for the weekly and the daily. But if you focus in on just trying to complete the dailies and the weekly, you can acquire a ton of points just by getting those done. So I managed to get like 1,200 astral points or whatever they're called, astral bucks. I think they're astral something or other.
Astral
bucks. It was enough to get the Griffin skin. So nice. I was like, oh, let's
Which
do
it's
it.
a really good Griffin skin, I think.
Yeah, it's fun. And the legendary crafting box is probably going to be next. In fact, so they have the legendary crafting box, from what I've read, is basically the equivalent of doing the first half of a legendary crafted weapon.
Okay.
So you get the precursor and you get a couple of different gifts that you need. And right now they're offering 4 legendaries from the first issue.
Okay.
So they have Quip, Bifrost, Meteorologicus, and Bolt.
Okay.
So you can get the precursor for that and then some stuff that you're going to need to make it, which is, it's nice. A long process. I've done it twice with 2 different legendaries. It's a very long process, but just having that stuff done is a lot of gold and a lot of time saved. So
yes, I still haven't finished mine, but for some dumb reason, I was going for the legendary focus, which is like the Necronomicon book looking thing.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
It's I think I was going to make the precursor on accident because I wanted the skin for my current look. And then I realized, I've basically made the precursor. Great. Now I got to finish it. And there are a few things that I'm kind of locked behind. Several grinds, but I think one of which is World v World or PvP related. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of time-gated stuff on there too, but they are an interesting, and it makes me wonder. But so with all this in place, and there are other rewards, even the skins that they have for weapons this go around, and this is going to be a rotating cast of different things, just like it was in WoW, where you had, I don't know if it was monthly, I don't know if it'll be monthly in Guild Wars 2, but I think WoW's was monthly. But the weapon skins that are on the Wizard's Vault are really, really cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of different rewards that you can choose from. There's all sorts of things that, depending on your place and time and wherever you are in the game, you can just go and just dump it all into gold if you want. You can spend, I don't remember what it's only like 100, I don't remember, but you can get like 90 gold right off the bat if you just drop some astral points on it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try this legendary armor. I've looked into a little bit, and I think I can definitely get this done. It's not gated behind raiding. It's not gated behind PvP or world versus world. And I think I can definitely want to get that done. I think I'm going to focus on the light armor. So I think I've become Mesmer Harbinger mains. So
jinx.
My Necro and my so I made a new Mesmer to run through all this. I might have mentioned that last week, and maybe not.
I don't remember.
But yeah, I named her the Japanese equivalent of Jinx, and she's designed kind of around Jinx. I mentioned earlier I was watching Arcane for the second round. Must have been inspired. Yeah, definitely inspired by Arcane. So, and she's been a lot of fun. It's a staff Condi build, which sounds weird. Like, why do you have two of the same weapon? But it's basically trying to generate stamina by switching out weapons on cooldown, because they have a shift which generates illusions, so you can kind of keep it going. But surprisingly, like, I was a little worried because I'm like, well, all right, here we go. I'm buying all Viper's stuff, and let's see how squishy this is going to be, because I've run Viper on my Spectre before, and even though she's in medium armor, it can be a little squishy. But
yeah, I'm in full Viper on Elementalist, and squishy is
But the Mesmer with full Viper, man, it's pretty rough. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't do probably the top end DPS, because staff is not necessarily known for that sort of thing, but the amount of pressure combined with mobility that it's a lot of fun. I've seen it posted like, this is a low intensity type of build. I'm like, oh, okay, well, whatever. So, but it's perfect for me to start out, because it's fairly low intensity, but there's a lot going on. So for me to kind of relearn Mesmer, because that was my first class when I picked up Guild Wars 2 way back in 2013 or whenever it was. And loved it, but I haven't really played much of it since. I have another Mesmer, but she was one of those level 80 power up kind of characters, so I didn't really play her that much. But it's been a lot of fun to go through the story and go through all this with her. So
yes, sir.
So I guess one last little thing for Guild Wars 2.
It's the roadmap.
Yeah, the roadmap.
I have it pulled up so I can go through it.
Go through it.
So with the announcement, or it wasn't an announcement, it was with the announcement of the patch being live, they included this chart, or a table really, of the roadmap for this game. specifically for Secrets of the Obscure and the updates following. And one, I remember watching a Mighty Teapot video, and he was going bananas over this, and because they were given all this information. But they also mentioned at the very end that they're already working on the 5th expansion, I think. Let me see. I don't know. They said it somewhere. I don't know if I'm just making that up. But anyway, the roadmap lists all these different things. So like story maps, instanced combat, weapon masteries, wizard's vault, armor relics, and rift hunting. And then it shows what's live now, what's coming in the next update that follows the release of Secrets of the Obscure, then update 2, and then update 3. And what it looks like to me is that they're including new story each time. So maps, this is interesting too. So you've got the 3, right? Although the Wizard's Tower is basically a fancy outpost. Yeah. So you've got 2 plus Wizard's Tower. Well, the next update is going to bring another map, which will be the final map. And then the 2 updates following that will extend that map and then complete it. So that's pretty neat. So really what they're saying is with this year-long cycle, they're doing like 3 zones, which is cool. I really like how ANET designs their zones for Guild Wars 2, so I'm all for that. But then they've got like Strike mission coming, a Fractal. They've got a new Mastery line coming in the next update, some Mastery updates following that, an additional armor set, and then the Legendary armor that's coming in the later updates. More relics, more rift hunting, which I haven't even touched. And
that's fun.
Yeah, new weapon proficiencies for each profession. I think that's the one that we're kind of curious about, specifically in how it relates to what we play, because I play a Weaver Elementalist that is a Scepter and a Focus. I have played it before for many hours as Sword and Focus. And then I also have Staff, but so when you were talking about your Mesmer swapping between the same weapon, I'm sitting over here like that's Chinese because I don't understand it because I literally don't weapon swap. So
yeah, well, it's funny because you unlock the weapon master training through I don't know the 2nd or 3rd little story arc in the Secrets of the Obscure story. You just talk to a little guy and you basically unlock the weapon master training. So what they've done was they had a beta a month or 2 ago where they kind of just let everyone out, like here's a bunch of gear, go have fun with what we're going to do for Soto. And but they included the new weapon proficiency, which is not necessarily included with what we have right now. So they're in update 2, they're adding the new weapons for each different class. So Elementalist will get, what was it, a pistol?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, which I'm excited to try out as
so that'll be update 2. But right now they've unlocked, once you get this little, you basically unlock this thing through the story. Very, very simple. Just by talking to a guy, and you'll be able to bring a catalyst hammer to your Weaver if you want.
Nice.
Stuff like that. So any elite spec that you have unlocked a weapon for, you'll be able to use on a different elite spec, or for core too. Okay. Nice. And I don't even know if you necessarily have to unlock it. I think they just unlocked them. Yeah. For everybody. So, and this is not, you don't even have to have Soto to experience this. You just go and do it. But I like this roadmap. It's vague enough, but it kind of gives you like, okay, they're definitely adding things, and you can just look at it and see exactly what they're adding. But it's really, really neat.
Yes, sir. All right. That's Guild Wars 2 Soto. We'll be back at some point for more Guilders more Guilders.
For Guilders Wars 2.
Guild Wars 2. But now we're going to dive into our favorite currently.
Well, if it isn't our two illustrious adventurers, friends, you should read what they're really saying about you in the latest Baldur's Mouth.
What sort of wild tales are they spinning this time?
Grab a seat and I'll bring you some ale. Why don't you tell me what really happened?
So, have you come across the Baldur's Mouth yet in game?
I have come across a reporter.
Okay.
But not a crier.
Not a town
that they
crier.
showed in the trailer, like, go and get your Baldur's Mouth here. Okay. Not one of those, but I encountered a reporter.
Interesting.
For Baldur's Mouth. Yeah. This was on the Worm's Crossing, which is a bridge that kind of leads into Baldur's Gate, but
fascinating.
Not quite inside of the city yet. I haven't made a whole
close.
lot of progress. Yeah.
70
so
plus
close.
hours
I can
later.
see the gate.
This is going to be a shorter segment for Baldur's Gate because we're at the point in the game where we'd have to redact like 80% of what we talk about to avoid spoilers. So we're going to tiptoe around it the best we can. We'll definitely talk about our multiplayer story moments because that is all in the first area of Act 1 so far. Still, it's been a blast, but I'll go through mine because I am not as far as you. Okay. And then you can go through yours and then we'll talk about multiplayer. But still loving the game. It is fantastic, honestly. It's just, there's so much. Like, it seems, if we weren't doing this multiplayer playthrough and the only time I would have experienced the opening area and stuff was when I did it with my current playthrough, it would feel like it was ages ago, probably, with the amount of stuff, the amount of things my characters have seen, all that stuff. So I am in Act 2. I am in the Shadow-Cursed Lands, and there's many orders of business in that region, but the one that I most recently undertook was going into the Temple of Shar, which is relating to Shadowheart's character arc. And there's a lot that takes place there. Certainly pretty pivotal moments for Shadowheart. But I don't want to dive into that too much because, again, spoilers. And I think her story it's a lot darker than I thought it would be. You probably assumed it based on what you knew about her.
Well, but what I knew about her quote-unquote goddess.
Yeah, cleric and her goddess. But it's very good. The writing's great. Some of the stuff that she goes through is fascinating. And she's also my character's love interest. So I am a bit more biased towards it. But one thing that happened in that temple that was really exciting for me, specifically as a newbie to Dungeons and Dragons, was there's two different wings of this temple and like a main path. And so one of the wings leads to the Trials of Shar, and the other leads to a sort of side story with a character that you meet early on who is not so trustworthy, or based on the fact that he's a devil. And anyway, so he has you doing something in this temple, and what kind of leads you to that is a displacer beast, which I recognized immediately from Honor Among Thieves. And so that was really cool to see that. I didn't get the privilege of engaging it in combat, or maybe I should say I avoided the certain death that engaging it in combat probably would have brought, because I found an alternative solution to the encounter or story elements that Displacer Beast was involved in. But just being able to see it was really, really neat because, again, it was a callback to what I would say was my primer into D&D through Honor Among Thieves. I still haven't found a gelatinous cube. Have you seen a gelatinous cube?
No, not yet.
If there's not one, I will only be slightly disappointed in the in the game. There's been mimics, and so that's been happy. I've been happy about that, but no gelatinous cubes. But I did see the Displacer Beast. So
there you go.
That's the Temple of Shar with as much redacted info as I can. The next step was to then, especially after resolving Temple of Shar, was to finally go push to the Moonrise Towers. Unfortunately, doing things in the order that I did them in made for some sobering moments inside of Moonrise Towers. Most notably, making it into the prison where once you've done things in the order that I did them in, it is no longer possible to save the people that had been captured. And where I found them was a bit, not depressing, but it was like a sorrowful moment, honestly, because I was like, man, I have let down so-and-so that is waiting for me at my camp, or another character is not going to be happy to learn what I have learned. And so that's one half of the coin, and the other half is that I was like, for anybody who's made it to this point of the game, you can either tiptoe around and try to get out of combat as much as possible, or you can just go running straight in through the front door and engage in probably the hardest fight that exists in the game up to this point. And so I've tried that many times and failed. And so then finally I did a combination of tiptoeing, sneaking, but the problem is it still triggers the middle fight with the NPCs. A certain druid being one of them who wields dual scimitars. Unfortunately, Shiloh, the way I managed, and I owned it because I am against save scumming in this game. After all was said and done, the entire main floor of Moonrise Towers was destroyed of enemies or whatever, removed of enemies. The only person literally between all NPCs and my party that was standing was Asterion. So 600 gold later, and I got my party back, but regrettably the entire attack force led by said druid was just, they weren't even just wiped out. Like somehow I managed this fight I think because I got like level 8 before I went into it, rather than wait. Like normally I would go into this fight and then like a few kills in I'd get level 8 because that's how close I was. Yeah. Well, I had got level 8 by doing some other stuff while this fight's going on, and then I get brought into it and then I kind of wiped the floor. But yeah, a lot of death took place. And it's a very dark isn't the right word. Twisted isn't even the right word either, but it's a pretty macabre place in general. And there's more stuff that happens or that you find out later on, which is my third thing. And that's that I have completed the Moonrise Towers completely. And all that entails. I am waiting to go back to camp so certain characters can reconnect. and I'm guessing it's going to be a similar experience to the camp scene that you get in the Act 1 if you either help the grove or I'm assuming if you attack it. But for me, I helped the grove, and so there was a giant party at my camp. So I suspect there will be something similar now, except maybe a lot more somber because of the sheer amount of bloodshed and death. But
so much death.
But the writing has been incredible between the characters. And it honestly feels like I've barely scratched the surface of the game. I know that there's probably like a third of the game left, but it doesn't feel like that's possible. Like, it feels like there needs to be like the same amount or double because of the sort of the things that are revealed to you by the end of Act 2. So
yeah,
that's where I'm at.
That's interesting.
It's we'll have to talk about it when we're not recording. Again, don't want to spoil it for everyone, but I'd be curious to see what your decisions were and how you handled certain things.
Yeah, we'll have to go over that later. Yeah, I'm really that's cool that you got through Moonrise Towers. Now you completely understand what I meant by, I think I posted in QTM discussion about wait till Moonrise Towers.
Yep.
Moses like, well, wait till you get to the end of the game. I'm like, oh boy.
But that's good because that's how Divinity Original Sin 2 felt, right? Like in Fort Joy, there were like a few fights that you're like, oh my goodness.
Man, can't get any worse than this.
And then you get to the or the Reaper's Coast, and then there's a few fights there where you're like, you have to redo it. And then you get to the third little place and even crazier. And then the final fight is just mind blowing in Divinity. So yeah, Larian's done a great job of upping the stakes each time and also the spectacle of it. So that should be pretty exciting to see.
Yeah. So I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just going to put these I'm just going to say exactly what I wrote down here. So, illithid decisions.
I don't know what that means, but that sounds exciting.
Yeah, I'll keep it at that. Giving Jaheira a spot on the roster. So she's made the 53-man cut if you're a fan of the NFL. For now, I don't know. I haven't really engaged a whole lot of.
Who'd she replace?
Right now, Lae'zel's on the sideline.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know where I'm going in a certain direction with the Githyanki yet.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, you just wait here. I've got.
And I'll think about it.
I got this. Got my main squeeze over here, Jaheira.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a druid, and I'm gonna make her heal and stuff, and turn into an owlbear. She can do that kind of stuff. Plus, she's got some really, really, really cool AoE stuff that I kind of lack here and there that I don't have on my warlock, and I don't have Explodey Boy Gale on the party. So right now I'm running with the Styrian myself. I'm looking a little worse to the wear. But it's myself, Styrian, Karlach, and Jaheira. Yeah. So we'll see.
Interesting.
It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. So.
Does she have like conversations and stuff? I wondered how much they put, because obviously like the origin characters are very well thought out. They've got a ton going on. There's like, cutscenes with just them, all sorts of stuff. So I'm wondering if they put that much effort into those companion characters as well.
Yeah, she's very well fleshed out. I think Tempest had said that you can romance her, but I don't think you can. I think I read that for some reason you cannot romance Jaheira. I don't know why, but it's too bad too because she's.
Well, you can Halsin, so that's for certain, because that's where all the memes.
Well, I'm gonna give it a shot, regardless.
Maybe she turns into a panther instead of a bear.
Ooh. And the last one I have is Carnival Time.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that was one that I was like, oh yeah, because whenever you see a circus in D&D, not a big fan of carnivals and circuses and
in real
in
life.
the real world because they're very sketchy. You don't have the term carny for no apparent reason. But yeah, whenever I see a carnival in a fantasy game, I'm like, all right. Especially in this one, in a D&D world, I'm like, yeah, let's go. But it's just funny. I bought face paint that turned my character into a clown for until a long rest,
nice.
which was funny. Yeah, there's just lots of interesting, funny things you can do there.
Well, my character's a bard, so whenever I get there, I'm sure I will have a blast.
Go ham.
Yeah.
All right. You want to discuss some multiplayer stuff? So people can watch. Coniff has posted our, what is it, D&D?
It's called Baldur's Gate 3 with Friends.
With Friends, there you go.
Part 3 will be live the same time, actually a little later than this episode going live on YouTube. So if you're listening to this, it's already going, or it will be out there in a few hours if you're listening to it as soon as this episode launches. Otherwise, stay tuned. But it was a pretty good one, I think. You can tell that like we're playing more efficient than when we first started. And I think it's because we also all four of us realize like the sheer amount of game that we barely touched. Yeah. And so honestly, I don't know if we'll complete our multiplayer playthrough or if it's just going to fizzle out. But even if it does fizzle out, it has been a ton of fun. I could see like going through this entire game, and that's why I think the whole split screen co-op thing is so important. But I could see like somebody with their significant other going through this entire game as a duo, and then include like 2 origin characters. I think that would be a ton of fun. And the multiplayer in this game works exceptionally well, especially for like a turn-based RPG where one person can be having conversations over here while another's doing stuff over here. But so with our most recent session, we finally took care of, finished out the little blighted village. And I'm actually going to read these in reverse order from the notes. But we go into this, the well is the spider den, right? So there's a hatch in one of the buildings that leads into this like subterranean layer with a bunch of coffins. So I go click on one because I like to loot, and Fists, my dwarven monk, is all about that life, and a skeleton pops out. Well, at this point, we have defeated the spider matriarch. A stupid skeleton is not terrifying at all. And truthfully, this fight was easy. But at one point in the fight, after we had cleared the initial skeletons, you go talk to a mirror, and then we got it wrong because none of us have great charisma for some reason. None of our characters do, and lacking intelligence too. So it is what it is. Yeah. But anyway, we failed this mirror encounter, and a little floating orb popped up and produced a ton more skeletons. And one particular skeleton, on his turn, this is an enemy, goes over to this coffin and just starts opening the lid back and forth over and over. And you can see it in our playthrough, and we're like, what on earth is it do? Is it like bugged out? Like, because what it appeared to like us is that he's like, I'm going to go over here and get my friend. Okay, open. Where's he at?
Where's he in there?
What if I do it again? Maybe he'll show up. And again. And again. So I included something rather funny in my edit of that. But you'll have to watch that to see. What about the ogres, Shiloh?
The one thing I have written down here is wolf make ogre mad. So one thing that Jeff, our buddy, Beta Race, has a ranger in this playthrough, and he can have an animal companion, and had a wolf out. And it wasn't me. My character is a terrifying deep gnome druid.
Yeah, terrifying.
And can turn into a wolf, but I wasn't in wolf form. I was in my little form.
He was just terrifying without being a wolf.
Yeah, I don't need wolf form to look terrifying. But for some reason, Jeff's wolf made this ogre very, 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 very mad, and just started attacking. Like, I don't know exactly what he did, or if it was just the wolf, or but he certainly did not like the wolf. And so there are 3 ogres at this camp, and you can kind of bargain if you have enough charisma. Like Coniff said, none of us do. But yeah, so we engaged in combat with all 3 of them, and it was just funny because the wolf really did make the ogres mad. But not a big fan of wolves. I know Shadowheart doesn't like wolves. Have you encountered that?
Yeah, that's part of
does
her
not
backstory.
like them. I was like, oh, to hell with you, lady. But
he didn't.
It was like strike 1 for me. No wolves. But the last bit, I think this is where we kind of called it.
We did like one little fight after, but yeah, this was like the pinnacle of the episode.
Yeah, it was the anti-Ethel storyline. Well, it's not really a spoiler. We're past that point, but the hag in the swamp, which was a big moment for my single player playthrough. So it was fun to see it from a multiplayer playthrough, which is completely different than my single player playthrough, which was terrifying.
Because Tempest, our friend who is playing Karlach, decided he was going to try and have Miss Auntie Ethel get the worm out, the parasite, the illithid parasite, out from his brain. And her fee for this is your pecker, as she's... No, not the pecker. Peeker. Although it wouldn't surprise me if she was trying to get the pecker too. No, the peeker, as she says. And so she, in her little hag form, uses a clawed finger and just rips out your eye.
With a pecker on that.
She said she wanted to kiss it, so definitely glad it wasn't a pecker.
Yeah.
It was a peeker. Yeah. And then she sticks it back, and now he's got hag eye, or whatever it's called, some ailment.
He's got it in real life too. So
yeah, probably. And it's done nothing but cause him pain, so I don't know what his angle was, but more power to Tempest. But so if you recall in your single player playthrough, going into her back cave area with the 4 people wearing masks, that fight was kind of a challenge. But this time we legit just cruised through it. And of course, like, we knew what to do, or we know to be more aggressive. I think that's kind of the thing with these type of games, is like early on, you're not aggressive
because you don't know exactly what's coming.
Yeah, but when you do know, and you're just like, I'm just gonna go run over here, and if I get hit for 10 damage, whatever, I'm gonna smoke them. So with that said, we take that same energy into the anti-Ethel fight and proceed to literally miss every single attack for like 5 turns. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bad.
And I realized after editing this episode that Tempest, he thought what I was going to try to do was void bulb anti-Ethel into the hole.
I don't think that would have worked.
No, but... So to clarify, and you can see it in the episode, what I'm trying to do is use my big brain moment and get Mayrina out of the cage by using a void bulb. So the cage is this wicker cage, and the hag is literally dumb because she didn't put a door on it, and so it's just open. And so if you start the encounter with Mayrina in the cage, the hag will turn it on, or, make it burst into flames, whatever. So then, you obviously got to figure it out, because if once it breaks, she's fallen straight into the pit. So one way you could do that is by throwing water at it. The way that I figured it out was I had a void bulb from the Nautiloid ship, and so I took it, and there's a little platform, and I threw it on the platform, and the AoE circle just touches the inside of the cage where she's standing, and it'll yoink her out of the cage and land on the platform. She gets like -20 attitude towards you and takes like a little bit of damage, but she's safe. And then, until later, and then you find out the whole deal.
She'll never be happy.
Yeah, she'll never be happy with us, for sure. Yeah, after what Sundays did.
Well, definitely not.
But the nice thing about that is then she runs away and is not part of the fight at all. Whereas if you do it the other way, Auntie Ethel will sometimes she'll teleport Mayrina out, and then also become Mayrina, like a visage of Mayrina, and so you don't know which one's which, and so you might accidentally kill the wrong one, whatever. But we literally missed like every single attack, and then you tried to go jump into the pit, and you you couldn't get to it, or it was dumb. So
when everyone else wiped,
because we all died within like one round. Her and all of her little clones just wiped us all. It was
because we couldn't hit anything.
No, we missed everything.
It's funny. Good times. Yeah, I even if it does fizzle out, it would be fun. This is kind of a testament to D&D as well. Like, this is the type of fun that you can have in a campaign, with a dungeon master, and even if it is online co-op, or using Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, or there's a number of different software. Even D&D itself, and WotC is releasing, what is it, D&D, I don't know, they have their own software that you can use to create online campaigns. But it would be fun to do something of this nature down the road, even if it does fizzle out. Would be perfectly fine by me. But
you know what I also think would be cool too, that if Larian made this possible. So from what I have seen, like, each of the acts are kind of like a third of the game. I don't know about Act 3, and of course, like, you need to play Act 1 to understand what's happening in Act 2 or the purpose. But what would be cool is if they added a way in the future to set up a multiplayer game that starts in Act 2 or starts in Act 3. Because the way I see it, we've played 9 hours, the four of us, for our multiplayer session. That's effectively, that is 3 3-hour nightly sessions, weekly sessions. And so if you were to compare this to maybe like a real board game night, real D&D night, like board games with campaigns and stuff, like, doing 3 3-hour sessions is a lot. And so we're about to do 4, in a day or two, and we probably won't even complete Act 1. Well, I know we won't next time we play. And so it would probably take us 5 to 6 of these 3-hour sessions to even get through Act 1. Well, that's basically like an entire D&D campaign worth of time, right? Would you say that's comparable, like the amount of time?
Not really. I mean, there are campaigns that run for years, so it just depends.
The Common Man campaign.
I mean, it's hard to say, because right now, in the past, D&D campaigns were these long, epic, get all the way to basically deity tier, but in the 5e form, and Larian admitted that they didn't want to go past level 12 because spells past that get really OP. So it gets really convoluted. And D&D has always been that way, where once your character gets to a certain level, they are almost chosen tier or almost to the realm or getting to the area of godhood, where it's then it becomes a very hard story to tell. But I mean, it just, because you can have one-offs and smaller little campaigns and things like that. But
well, I just say
it's a good amount of time. It is, but it just depends on the player and the DM and who all you have going with you. But
yeah, and I guess I got 6 levels in the first act, and I'm only at level 8 finishing the second act. But it obviously gets harder to level, so it's more or it just takes more XP, whatever. So I would say I don't know, I feel like 6 levels is pretty good for a campaign. But you also got to remember, what I'm trying to say is I think the entirety of Act 1 or Act 2 could be its own self-contained campaign.
Yeah.
Because in real life, it would take you a lot longer to go through that anyway with how you would do combat and everything. So
yeah, it would be a hard thing to do, because you could gate it to where, well, you would have to have completed the game in a single player playthrough. Yes. But then it's how do you know that if in a multiplayer campaign? I guess you just flag them or something. I don't know.
Just do that. The Witcher did it, where in one of the cutscenes at the beginning of the game, your character, Geralt, gives a history of what he was doing, or rather someone asks you a bunch of questions, and a lot of those questions he asks you are decisions you made in Witcher 2. So they could do some of the major points and make it you fill out this answer these questions. So think of Firewatch, how the first 5 minutes of that game is you're doing the choices. You do that, and then it would drop you with a level 6 character in the beginning of Act 2. And then you've got the decision. So you either helped the Grove or you didn't. And if you did, it obviously determines who your auxiliary characters are. And then you could say okay, we want these origin characters in our camp, whatever. So they could figure it out, but I think that'd be neat just to...
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, just that way, if you start a multiplayer, you don't literally have to run through the first part of the game every single time over and over and over. But I'm really curious. It's not necessary at all. It's such a fantastic game, but yeah. All right. We finally get to use this bumper that our dear friend Stark helped us out with. So here we go.
Good evening, folks. This is your captain speaking. We've begun our descent into Alpha Centauri's atmosphere and should be arriving at New Atlantis Spaceport in just about 10 minutes. On behalf of Constellation, we hope you enjoy your stay.
The closer we get to Starfield releasing, the more I am excited for it. And I think it's because both of us have put in a ton of time in BG3, a ton of time. And so we have been eating good, we're full. I'm still hungry for more because I want to finally get to Baldur's Gate and all that entails. But I was watching the deep dive that they did at the Xbox showcase back in June.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for a different approach on an RPG. Now that we've gotten one that's so massively story driven, it'll be interesting to play one that's more sandbox with stories, certainly, but where your character can kind of become whatever it wants to be, which again you can do in D&D, but whatever. What's your take? Are you pumped? I mean, we've been waiting for this game for almost, this is 5 years is when they announced it in 2018 at the Bethesda showcase. So
I'm pretty excited. I'm not as excited as I probably would have been if Baldur's Gate 3 had not come out. So
which is fair, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, really, but I don't think that's to take away from my excitement. Obviously it has, but it shouldn't. It hasn't taken away from my excitement. It's just like how much of my excitement has now been kind of branched off into a different compartment of what is BG3 and now what is Starfield. So it's just going to be a different game, and it'll be fun to play a more live action RPG.
Yes. That's a good point.
Not that I dislike CRPGs at all, because that's what I grew up on. We've gone over that time after time, and you've certainly gotten to love these turn-based CRPGs as well. But it'll be fun to kind of go back into a live action, because we all certainly crave that. I mean, I think part of my dive into Guild Wars 2 again, even though it's an MMO, is because it is live action, and there is live action combat, and you have to be fast with your fingers, and don't really get to we don't really get to pause in BG3, but you can take pauses. So, but I am not a sci-fi guru, as much as per se you are, or certainly probably a good number of our friends. I've always been a fantasy first type of person, but this has always been on my radar, and I'm really excited. In fact, I went ahead and got the $30 bump to get the added time, so I could play on my days off, which aren't necessarily everyone else's days off. So that way I can next week I'll actually have some play time in before next episode. So
yes,
and I won't spoil anything, but I'll at least be able to kind of nod. I don't know. Did you pick up the $30 extra?
No, I thought about it. Are you
going to play on Game Pass, or are you going to play?
I'm going to play on Game Pass.
Yeah. It just seems silly to buy the game because I already have Game Pass, and I'm not probably going to not have Game Pass for a while. So I might as well, play it on Game Pass.
I have this
problem. So the $30, like, well, why not? It was, for me, I looked at it as like, I can play it during some time off that I have, while I have it. And, I didn't have to buy the game. Well, I mean, besides buying Game Pass.
But there's so much stuff coming to Game Pass that, by the end of this year, that I don't know if you're going to play some of it, but like for me, like Forza, Motorsport, obviously Lies of P, which is a Pinocchio Souls-like.
I did play the trailer for that. It was very good.
I do want to play Cities Skylines 2 because our friend Sonny played the first one on stream earlier this year, and I haven't played a good like modern city builder in at least like a decade or more. And so I'm excited for that. But my problem is that I have this thing called a Steam addiction, which I'm sure many of our listeners also have. And so on one hand, I'm like, the responsible thing to do is literally just play it on Game Pass. The irresponsible thing is, but I want it in my Steam library. And so I am constantly warring with myself, but I think that reason and logic is winning out. And so I probably will do the same thing you do and get the $30 upgrade for the sake of the not so I can play it early, because I don't think I'm going to be able to. Like, I'm going to be gone, I believe. But because it gives you access to the first DLC. Right?
That was another thing. You get the skins, which whoop-de-doo. But you have the access to the expansion, which who knows if the game could flop. I don't see it foresee it happening at all like that, but I might as well get that. And it does include, I pre-installed it on my Series X.
Ooh, I need to do that.
And it comes with and I guess it's because you're only going to be able to look or watch it all this, because I knew that this episode was coming up, and it comes with some sort of art book or something, and the soundtrack or whatever, digital. So I downloaded the assets for that, but I couldn't look at it. I was like, really? I got to wait till the game comes out before I can look at that. Like, this is the time.
I am curious on the music. So you said it gives you the soundtrack?
Yeah, I think so. It's a digital soundtrack and digital art book or something like that. I can't remember. But it was a separate download that you could just download. So I have it downloaded. I just can't look at it until launch, or at least pre-launch. So I'm like, well, so in the future, if you have a game that comes with that sort of stuff, make it. And I don't know the legal ramifications of all this, but if you could make it to where you have like a little hype packet, I would consider this like a hype packet,
like a media kit.
Make that to where you could watch it before launch or something. I don't know how you do that legally or whatever that entails, but that would be cool, because it's the perfect time, because when it comes to launch, I'm not going to be looking at that stuff. I'm going to want to just play the game. Yeah, I could listen to it while I'm playing the game. Now is the time when I want to look, and I have the time to look and see and make some notes and all that sort of stuff. But
yes.
So speaking of notes, what are your pre-launch, like any kind of prep that you're gonna do, or what kind of character you have in mind, or?
So first of all, my pre-launch thoughts or excitement is centered around the fact that this is at least for me is going to feel like the yin to the yang that is BG3, because BG3 is this massive fantasy RPG epic, and this Starfield is being touted as this massive sci-fi RPG epic. And so one is third-person cutscenes with turn-based combat, and the other is I'm going to play it first-person all the time, action, gunplay, sci-fi, space combat, content. So on one hand, that's kind of where I'm lying, is like, I love fantasy, but for me, I grew up with sci-fi. And so I still think BG3 is likely going to be Game of the Year. But with Starfield, I am equally excited for that reason. But I did want to say, now that you mentioned the audio or the soundtrack, I was thinking the last Fallout 76, whatever, but the last two main Bethesda titles are Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Skyrim's soundtrack is like legendary at this point.
Yeah.
Fallout 4 has Fallout's always kind of relied on the 50s Nat King Cole, Bing Crosby style music. And so that's been a part of its charm and its feel for so long.
Yeah.
But Fallout 4 still had, like, the opening menu is iconic. And so Fallout 4 still had some really fantastic soundtracks, and that's by Einon Zur, whereas what's his face did Skyrim. Why do I not know? He did ESO. He did Guild Wars 2. What's his name?
Jeremy Soule.
Jeremy Soule. He did base game of Guild Wars 2. And so I think Einon Zur is the one composing for Starfield. And that is going to be just fantastic if that's the case. And so I'm really excited to hear what he comes up with for this. He's working on Starfield. Just because, like, that's one piece about Bethesda games that it doesn't get talked about until like down the line when the game's been out and people are like, that music is fantastic. So I'd expect that some of Starfield stuff is going to be really great. And so I'm excited for that. But also, I was watching the deep dive today and I was getting some Destiny 2 vibes. Obviously not from like the aliens or whatnot, but like some of like the first person combat and gameplay. I'm like, yeah, this is giving me Destiny 2 vibes. And of course you're like looting stuff. And so Destiny 2 is in a weird place for a lot of people, but it'll be nice that there's going to be another sci-fi first person shooter that we can sink our teeth into. That's not Destiny, not the Destiny model. So I mean, other than that, like they did do a live action trailer that is really well done. Bethesda really knows how to market their games. Like they're masters at that.
I'm not like ArenaNet.
I'm freaking ArenaNet needs to work on it. But Bethesda does a great job of building hype for their game. Of course, that backfired with Fallout 76. But on the flip side, I remember like being extremely excited for Fallout 76. I took part in the stress test, 1 or 2 that they did for Fallout 76. Loved it. And then the game came out and I took a break for half a year before diving in. But so for Starfield, like this is their big shot at restoring players' faith in them as developers. Because, Elder Scrolls 6 is... I actually just saw an article where Todd may have admitted that he thinks they teased that or announced it a little too soon. Yeah. And I think that's great. Whatever. I will be more interested in the next Fallout, the mainline Fallout, like Fallout 5 or whatever they call it, than I would be Elder Scrolls 6. I think Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be good. But none of that matters if Starfield doesn't nail it. It can have bugs, that's fine, but it needs to feel like that epic adventure sci-fi space game that the kid in all of us has always wanted. So that's going to be kind of the big test. But I think, I know that, Bethesda knows it. They know that they need to nail it. And Microsoft is probably like, yeah, you guys need to nail it because this is our only decent Xbox exclusive since Halo 3, So, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to play, though. You asked that, right?
Yeah, and I didn't until you had mentioned it in our show notes, and so I found this little article. I'm like, well, I wasn't one of those people that just paused, which, bless their hearts, y'all. But if they paused on the screen where they had the backgrounds and the traits and stuff, but someone has posted this, and I'll link it in the show notes or the links in our Discord, but obviously, character creation, whatever you want to make. But the main chunk of it is in the background and what are they calling it here? Background in your trait. So you're going to have a little backstory for your character. And
yes.
A trait looks like it's...
They have a whole list of them.
Okay. The trait gives you 2 passive effects that persist throughout your playthrough, 1 positive and 1 negative. So I'm really kind of leaning towards, obviously the first one here in the background is chef. Well, I'm not going to choose that because I have that in my real life, so I'm not doing that.
I'm not going to role play my real life.
Yeah, that's boring.
What are you going to pick then?
I'm considering, something like maybe Cyber Runner. I'm thinking like almost in the cyberpunk vein, like Cyber Runner, either introvert or what was it? Oh, Neon Street Rat. sounded fun. So some little punk kid, I'm thinking, is probably going to be my character, because I think that would be fun to kind of play as that.
I don't know. Like, so here's the thing with like D&D and Baldur's Gate. When that came out, one, we already knew like the classes available, and it's all based on the class and race. That's your primary decision making. With this though, like they're not as because of the way at least Bethesda games play, like they're not going to define how you interact with the world.
They're just going to influence a little bit.
And so that's the big difference here, is that when you're looking at these, and I'm going to read these as fast as I can for the listener.
All right, do it.
So here we go. So
Auctioneer.
Matt Gallagher from Once Upon a Time, WTF1, now P1 with Matt and Tommy. It's a Formula One journalist, a commentator, content creator, whatever. He used to do, every time after a race, he would do this race rundown where he would read the names as fast as possible, and then he'd always mess up. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm real bad at this, and there's one word that's going to trip me up, but here we go. Right. Chef, combat medic, cyber runner, cybernetist, diplomat, explorer, beast hunter, bouncer, bounty hunter, gangster, homesteader, industrialist, long hauler, pilgrim, Professor Ronan. Whew.
Yeah.
That was good. I've got some experience, but that was rough. And then the traits. Oh, I'm not going to do the traits.
Oh, come on.
No. Okay, fine.
All right.
Alien DNA, dream home, empath, extrovert. Alien DNA, dream home, empath, extrovert, freestar, collective, settler, hero, worshipped, introvert, kid stuff, neon, street rat, raised in line. I've give up.
Yeah.
Raised in light and raised in universal serpents, embrace space, taskmaster, terra firma, United Colonies, native, unwanted, hero, wanted.
All right.
Not that bad. That's not that good.
Pretty good.
What were we talking about?
What you were going to play. No, and I think your point is correct. Like, it's not going to matter in the long-term scheme of things. You're not going to be...
They're like flavors.
Locked out of guns, and it's just flavor text for your tune. So it was just funny to kind of look at and see.
Well, and they said that like some of it's going to matter. Like,
I'm sure it will matter, but it's not gonna majorly impact like your decisions, I don't think.
Yeah. So you pick one of the top ones. So one of the backgrounds and two of the traits. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Maybe you can pick more traits than just one, but essentially each trait that you choose gives you two passive effects that persist throughout your playstyle, one positive and one negative. Okay. So, for instance, like extrovert...
up to 3 traits, it says right there.
Oh, okay. So,
nice.
So you could be... Well, I don't know about extrovert and introvert. That would be probably a split personality disorder or something. But, if you have... let's say you have extrovert as a trait, you have a positive, which would be you can talk to pretty much anyone and maybe get some sort of persuasion bonus or whatever. I don't know the systems in place for the game, but and then the negative would be maybe you put your foot in your mouth or something at an inopportune time. I don't know, but I'm just making all this up. But stuff like that would be hero worshipped would be
that one they did talk about a bit in the showcase.
Well, they had they had
adoring fan.
So maybe that's what you end up with is some schmo following you around.
Yes.
Trying to throw his cape on the ground and while you walk over water or something. I don't know. But stuff like that, it makes it interesting. So you have these positive and negative bonuses and effects that go off throughout the game would be interesting.
So the background, and again, what we're kind of dwelling on here is the sort of flavor stuff. Like there is like the actual character creation with the body type, the head, all the different stuff,
and it does look really good.
The usual fare that comes with Bethesda games. But for me, I feel like I want to pick a background that's maybe a little different. So I always tend to pick like the behind the scenes type character. So like ESO, a Nightblade. He played, I guess maybe not behind the scenes character, but just like something a little more brains over brawn. And so I'm wondering if it would have a good time, especially with the way exploration is, or what we know about it, I wonder if Beast Hunter would be a fun one to take. So I like looking at this. I think my typical choice would end up being like diplomat, professor, or maybe like just explorer. So I'm thinking maybe going the route of like Beast Hunter or
Bounty Hunter,
industrialist or something. Like, you know, I don't know, just something that would make me approach the game differently, a little bit differently. And then as far as traits go, I do think I want to give kid stuff a try, because I think it'd be interesting to visit your in-game parents. And then, especially like if I'm the Beast Hunter, I'm like, yeah, this is what I got up to. This is look at this creature that I got.
Look what I did.
So then maybe like kid stuff mixed with, I don't know, like what any of these. Well, I don't know what any of these are. Like, what's spaced mean?
Yeah,
what is
I don't know, man.
Maybe alien DNA would be interesting. Like I'm a Beast Hunter, but like part of what makes me good at that is that I've got
your
some
antennae.
My this little antenna that's sticking out my forehead here. Have you noticed it? And so yeah, there's a lot of like I like character creation in games like this, even if like some of the stuff is you don't ever see. Like think Cyberpunk, you like see your character like 5 times, but I spent a lot of time making sure it was right. So yeah. Well. Any other final thoughts on Starfield, Shiloh, before we close out the episode?
We'll dive fully into it next episode and kind of give it'll be a pre and a post-launch episode, I suppose, depending on if you pre-ordered or not pre-ordered, but if you pre-ordered the deluxe edition or collector's edition and got your watch, which I've heard is actually people have seen the watch or gotten the watch, and it's gotten positive reviews. So good job, Bethesda.
Good job on not
releasing
making another
a physical collector's edition
canvas bag.
Yeah, your canvas bag fiasco. Oh Lord. But yeah, I'm kind of sad that I didn't get the watch because I needed a new watch.
It sold out pretty quick, apparently. So,
oh really? I don't know. I don't feel so bad. I'll just get a Google Pixel watch or something down the road.
And I'll just pretend.
Yeah, I'll just get a swatch and then just paint some stuff on it. Anyway, but yeah, we're going to dive fully into Starfield next episode, and we'll have a little BG3, I'm sure. Maybe some other things, but looking forward to next episode where we gonna go whole hog on Starfield. Whole hog.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you in the next episode. Peace.
Cheers. Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, House Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QTM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, the link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.